Richard. I was trying to find out what lighting works best. Yeah. Can you hear me fine? Fantastic. Is the video okay on your end for lighting, or do you need me to send some more lights on? Okay. Yeah, I just noticed there's a setting where you can make the background all blurry. So you're missing the excitement of some plain white doors, really. I think due to the time difference, we're going to be drinking different beverages throughout the year. No, I can't. Great. What music is it? Oh, yes, right. Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you very much for having me on, by the way. It's great. Oh, great. Yeah. Oh, glad to hear. Yeah, anything with Final Cut Pro in the title, Chris is usually all over. Even if he's betrayed by using a little bit of Premiere these days, but... I think that's actually my fault. I got him into it. Cool. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, well, me too. But so I thought. But I suppose we'll get into it. Maybe we'll, save it and sit here in a frigid silence for 23 seconds.
All right, we are live. Let me pull you up here. We are live with Michael Shanks, who did the movie that I'm going to play a couple of clips of. I downloaded it and I'm just going to play a few clips, called Rebooted. I have a lot of questions about that. Stop animation. That took you like a few hours to do that, right?
Yeah, we whipped it off in an afternoon. We had a couple of hours downtime. We thought, let's get that together.
So I can't imagine how long that takes. I mean, how long? I know days, obviously, but I mean.
Yeah, I think so. Well, to give people watching a little bit of context, the film is a live action film, but our main character is stop motion animated. So in that sense, funnily enough, whilst I was new to stop motion as a director, the animation went a lot faster than traditional stop motion shows, because usually every single thing is stop motion, but we essentially had one stop motion character.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that said, it's still not a quick process. So the film is about 12 minutes long, and just for that one character to be animated, I think it was about 6 months of animation.
Now, who does you have animation crew? People that do that?
Yeah, we had a small crew. It was essentially a crew of two. We had Samuel Lewis, was our puppet builder and animator, and Gerald Thompson was our stop motion sort of unit cinematographer. And his job was interesting because we were compositing the stop motion animation character into a live action frame. We essentially had to rebuild the lighting setups of our live action DP, who put lights here, here, and here, and then Gerald had to recreate that lighting here, and here for our tiny little puppet to make sure that all the lighting matched.
I see. It's really interesting. Like I said, so 6 months of
I
Stop
think that was
motion.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
It was.
how much was the actual filming? How much did that take?
I think that was about a week of shooting.
So
So yeah, very
so the
quick.
ratio it's incredible. So the ratio is 1 week to 26 weeks for the
Well, that's
stop
better math
motion.
than I can do, so I'll take your word for it.
52 weeks in a year, so I just figured
Oh yeah,
6
actually,
months.
that is pretty simple. But I am very stupid.
No, not at all. So let's go a little bit of your background first. So you have other films that you've done as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can give you the kind of brief cliff notes of how I got into the industry,
Yeah,
which
let's
was
do that.
I was 17 years old and I was doing my final year of high school in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia,
Okay.
which we call VCE. And sort of in my free time, I was learning a lot about do-it-yourself visual effects, learning from people like Andrew Kramer online because I sort of didn't have any dating prospects. So I thought, why not? And
Sure.
out of that, I was also, speaking of no dating prospects, I was going on like a lot of video game websites. Very cool. And there was a video game website called The Escapist Magazine, and they had sort of lots of like gaming related film content, like little series, etc. And they were running a film festival, and it was make us a short film, and the winner will get a contract to make a series for us. And this is an
Okay.
American website. And so I thought, well, I'm a theater kid. I reckon I could make a movie. I've always known how to do it. I now know how to make visual effects. And I got a couple of friends together, and we shot a little short film, and that won the film festival. So essentially, I was 17 and I got this contract where I had
Wow.
to make a 55-part series straight out of high school. So for the next 18 months, I decided to not go to university where I was going to do computer science. And instead, I did 18 months of sink or swim filmmaking, making this series, kind of an action comedy show. And that sort of was my film school. And out of that, I've managed to be fortunate enough to get some eyes on my internet content and have curated a YouTube channel which has had sort of a significant number of views and subscribers. And from that, turned that into a sort of more in the industry writing and directing career so far.
So that first instance, you got the bug to do filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, it was something I always wanted to do. Like, I grew up in New Zealand, and the Lord of the Rings film production was really coinciding with my growing up, and that was such an institution over there. Like I've said before, that it felt like every night on the news they would do the weather, they would do sports, and then checking in with Lord of the Rings. How's that going? Because it was the biggest thing ever in the country. And then those films came out that changed my life, and I just watched all of those behind the scenes features of how they did it. It was around the same time that the Star Wars prequels were coming out as well, and they had lots of great behind the scenes content, and I found that really inspiring. And I think that was kind of my way into fantasizing about making films. And then it was resources like Video Copilot, the work that Andrew Kramer was doing, that really opened my sort of adolescent eyes to, wow, this is possible. Like I remember one day after school, just watching his tutorials, and I think I probably pirated After Effects. Sorry, Adobe, we're friends now. It's fine. And I would have been 15 or so, 15 to 16, and I had like a Pikachu toy, and I put the Pikachu on like a piano, and I made it explode, using the worst 2D visual effects you can imagine. But yeah, it really opened up this whole world of possibilities to me.
So, and from there, let me see if I got this right. Yeah, that's good. So from there, so you were 17 when it started.
Yeah.
And what, you're like 19 now probably, right?
Oh, no. I wish. I'm 29 next week.
Okay. So have you been with Late Night Films this time, or when did you join them?
Yeah, for a long time. So it was right after I finished that series. So that series for The Escapist,
Right.
and I use series loosely. Like it was the whole thing was totally indie guerrilla, no real budget. Sure. So that finished up when I was 19, and then I randomly bumped into Nick from Late Night Films at an airport because I'd gone to high school with his then partner, and she said, "Oh, you like film, and Michael, you like film. You guys should meet." And then I think a month later, we made a film for a 48-hour film festival, and it won some awards there, and we got on, and since then we've just been kind of working together and been good friends.
So that
and
one
same with
scene,
Chris, that whole way.
That one scene that I want to ask you about, the theater scene when you have a shot from up high, and the theater changes from a new version to an old decrepit version.
Yeah.
Which one of those versions is real? I couldn't tell.
Well, they're both a little. The surroundings are fake in both, but the theater in the old timey version is real. So for some context, it's essentially a shot of a vintage theater as it was in its heyday. And then we sort of fade to it, decrepit and graffitied, and shut down. The aforementioned Nick, who produced the film from Late Night Films, ran in dressed as a homeless guy, put in a sleeping bag, and just lay out the front of the theater as pedestrians walk by, being like, "What are you doing here?"
Sure. And then I presume that 65 Mustang was a stock photo, because I had one of those. I had one used when I was a teenager. My dad said, "Well, you saved enough money when you were shoveling snow and stuff that you can." I got this friend that has a 65 that's used. You can buy it. I said, "Yeah, that sounds good." So I had one.
A great reward for that. But no, that was a real car. We struck gold there by. So we went to this little town just outside of Melbourne called Ballarat, and we wanted some vintagey stuff. And Chris, who had looked up and found this vintage car club in Ballarat. And the thing about guys with vintage car clubs, we called them and said, "Hey, we're doing this vintage scene.
Sure.
We don't have any money." They said, "Don't worry about it. We live to show off our cars." And so they brought like kind of 6 of them, and they all parked out the front. That whole shot was actually really interesting for people that when they watch the film. The whole shot begins as a full frame cinema screen, and we pull out of that over an audience, and then through the lobby of the cinema, and then we cross the road in an uninterrupted take until we're on the other side of the road where it's all nice and vintage and pristine, and then we fade to the present and it's all kind of crappy. And that's actually stitching together of 3 shots. The first shot is we flew a drone over an audience in a cinema, and then it stopped. And then we got a second shot of us flying the drone out of the lobby, and we kind of dressed it with some curtains to kind of pretend that there might be a way that we could come through a curtain at the back of the lobby, which then gets closed.
Right.
Then we got to our final resting position where the theaters are really wide. And I say it's a third shot, but that we kept the drone rolling, and we sort of said, "Everybody get out of there." So all the vintage cards left, all of our vintage extras left, and our producer ran and dressed as a homeless person. And then I just sort of cross-faded from the beginning of that take to the later end of that take, and added all these CG elements to look like time had passed.
Right. It was brilliant shot because it looks continuous. So it was 2 drone shots is what it was?
Yes. And it was funny as well because we had a really low budget for... honestly, it was probably a high budget for a short film because it's hard to come by budgets for short films. And our budget in total was about 120,000 Australian. So I think that's somewhat around 90 to 100 American, probably more on the 90 side of things.
Okay.
And that came from Screen Australia, our government funding body, and YouTube, who co-financed it. But the idea of filling a cinema with people, we had no budget to do that. We had no budget to pay extras. We couldn't have afforded that in the cinema. So we spoke to the cinema chain, and they said, "Yeah, cool. What you want to do is it was cheaper to buy every seat to a screening of Harry Potter. It was the Fantastic Beasts 2 movie."
That's funny.
We posted posters everywhere in Ballarat and said, "Free screening of Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts 2. Just come in 20 minutes early, and we'll just fly a drone over the top of you." And we had nobody sitting in the middle. We parted the seas like Moses, so in case the drone malfunctioned, we weren't going to kill any local Ballaratians. But it was great. It was good fun.
Yeah, I worked at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. for 8.5 years. I was the post supervisor down there, and they did films around that area because we were like 6 blocks from the Capitol and 6 blocks from the White House, so they were doing films down there all the time. And one of the times I went out there for like break, whatever, for morning break, and they have the signs posted everywhere. "We're shooting a film here today, and if you walk through here, you're given your rights to, use your image and likeness in the film." It was Angelina Jolie in Salt.
Oh, wow.
Salt. She actually slid down she didn't, but her double did, slid down the metro handrail that I used every single day in the film. You can see it from the National Archives. Yeah, it was very cool. But they did that a lot. When you walked outside, there'd be signs if you don't want to be in if you don't give your permission, don't come in this area or whatever. I don't know how legal that is, but that's what they did.
Yeah, I see. In my foreign Australian brain, I think of America as one giant movie set. So I'm assuming that stuff's happening all the time.
Well, of course, Hollywood, L.A. is where traditionally a lot of films were done. They have the movie sets built in and stuff, and then of course New York, certain amount. But they filmed like down south a lot. I mean, because like Blue Velvet, David Lynch was in North Carolina.
Right.
Filmed in North Carolina because
he's a Midwesterner, isn't he, David Lynch?
Yes, he is. Yeah, I'm a big David Lynch fan. I like just about all his stuff.
Oh, me too. Love him.
I was ecstatic when they announced Twin Peaks season 3 because I never thought we were going to see it after season 1 and 2. I thought 25 years and then all of a sudden it's season 3. Yeah. But anyway, I like his stuff.
It's great. Yeah, and they have that actually great line, and I think second season of Twin Peaks, where Laura Palmer says, "I will see you in 25 years." Exactly. And then it's like, wow, how serendipitous. Incredible.
Exactly. And what, according to Lynch and Frost, when they started having secret meetings about doing a third season, they had forgotten about that. I don't know how they could have. I mean, all the fans, I mean, I was much younger when it was on TV, but all of the fans knew that very specifically was 25 years. Okay, it's now. So it just worked out that way. Just very, very peculiar. But there's of course, rumors of season 4, so we'll see what happens.
Well, that'd be great. Fingers crossed, whilst,
you saw
they're
season
all still
3?
with us, I guess?
Yeah, well, no, they're not.
I did, yeah.
So they're not, but they weren't for season 3 either. A lot of people had passed away, so we'll see what happens. They had introduced a lot of new characters for that.
Yeah, it was a wild ride. I never knew what was coming in season 3. It was I loved it. I've never just. It's so great to be people like us, I suppose, that have studied film and it's kind of our lives and I write a lot of stuff. You end up slightly being able to predict when the magic tricks are coming, obviously. And so to watch something that was so unbeholden to rules of classical structure, it's just doing its own thing. Absolutely. It's really exciting.
Well, the only thing that was weird was, and we still can't figure it out, of course, I guess I shouldn't be saying it. Well, it's been out for years. If you haven't seen it, if you don't want to know what happens in Twin Peaks season 3, just turn off right now for a couple of minutes. The one thing was weird that is when they went back and rescued Laura and her body disappeared from that initial scene. It just fizzled up. So that would mean Cooper never went to Twin Peaks to begin with. So you got this whole paradox of what exactly does that mean? If her body disappeared from the beach, he never would have went to Twin Peaks, never would have had season 1 and season 2. Yeah,
so. It's I suppose like all paradoxes, it's not almost meant to make sense. But that's what's great about Lynch's work, and I think a lot of people who criticize Lynch, which I think is obviously totally valid, maybe get hung up on what everything necessarily has to like literally symbolize one thing, and everything has to be working as an analogy for one thing. Whilst I think I found Lynch really unlocked for me that a lot of film can be just sensory. It can be about what it evokes rather than what it necessarily means. And as kind of you sort of in as a teenager or like a 20-year-old trying to get into film more, that really was a what am I trying to think of? I was going to say Road to Damascus moment, but that might be a bit rich.
Well, like in when they had not Mulholland Drive, the Lost Highway. When the opening scene is the guy talking to himself on the intercom down from below, and it's also the ending scene. Yeah, Dick Laurent is dead. Dick Laurent is dead. He's saying on the intercom system, but at the end, it's him talking to himself. But how can that happen? Well, whatever. That's like the Twin Peaks saga. So let's get back on Rebooted. So I'm curious. I noticed that you said YouTube. Did they help funding with that?
Yes. So it's an initiative between Screen Australia, again, our government funding body, obviously, and YouTube called Skip Ahead. And the idea is that it takes creators who have established YouTube channels who have proven that they can connect with an online audience, and it gives them essentially a budget for a piece of content that's well above the budget, they'd usually be working with. So, it as the name sort of suggests, to skip ahead, it's about I guess often taking people that have entered into the film industry from maybe somewhat of a sideways point of view, because they might be more of a vlogger, they might be more of a comedian or a personality. They can kind of have a go at maybe using a lot of other teams that got the financing used it to, say, make a 6 by 5 minute series or something like that. Aspiring towards something else. I know that one group made a little musical series. One group made Christian Van Vuren and Adele Vuko made this fantastic series called Over and Out, which I really recommend, which is like a family sort of sitcom about the troubles of raising two young children in the face of an apocalypse. And it's really funny. It's really dry. I think it's one of the best pieces of content Australia has made, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's really, really good.
So, because that, I guess the stop animation, that cost, you paid a crew for 6 months. That had to cost some money. And I was wondering how
Absolutely.
you funded that. So YouTube was the main funder, or the Australian government, or?
I'm not exactly sure what the breakdown was, but I think it was mostly Screen Australia. I think Screen
Okay.
Australia probably did the bulk, but I'm not sure on that. But that would be my assumption.
Okay.
But yeah, so when it came to hiring the stop motion animation crew, it was just two people. So that and we managed to we were surprised at how cheap we were able to get it done.
Okay.
And of course, it was all union rates. It was all above board. It was a thing of nobody at Late Night Films nor myself. We took none of us took a fee. It was all about making sure the crew was paid. And I don't know how Chris and Nick did it, but it was a genius work of production to get the whole thing together, because it's not just the stop motion animation and in the center of the film, we also have an animatronic velociraptor, a mid-90s liquid metal CGI creation, a 2D animation, a
Wow.
creature from the Black Lagoon. So it's a celebration of the history of special and visual effects creations. And for me, it was about trying to get the visual of seeing the history of Hollywood special and visual effects creations coexisting in the same live action frame, which as a filmmaker, I'm obsessed with trying to create visuals I've never seen before, and it's also what I want as an audience member. And that was something I hadn't seen before, and I thought it was a really fun way to kind of tackle a story about sort of obsolescence and having the world change from underneath your feet. And also, I just thought it was cool.
No, it was. I watched. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to post a link to the video. You have like 350-some thousand views on YouTube at this point for that short.
Yeah, which I'm really happy with.
Yes.
It's been out for 2, maybe 3 weeks now, but
Right.
I've been lucky to have curated a YouTube channel over the years that's gotten several things that have kind of gone big, and we've got lots of content that's over 1 million. Sometime our highest I think is over 15 million. However, I haven't actually posted anything on YouTube in over 3 years. So this is the first piece of content in over 3 years. So I kind of had no idea how it was going to go. And particularly with something like a short film of an original idea, it's not like the typical content you would expect to go, say, viral, because it's not like parody or something.
Right.
But I'm really happy that's found an audience.
So I was watching it, and I'm glad I wasn't drinking coffee. I would have spit it out. The first time the character drinks, and it just goes through his mouth and just drips down which is what would happen physically. But the second time he does that, a bucket appears. Was that in a bar? Is that what that was?
Yeah.
So was he a regular there? Is that why the bucket was there?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay.
I heard a joke afterwards, which I hadn't heard before, which was it's just the skeleton walks into a bar and orders a beer and a mop. And I thought, yeah, that's the same joke.
Okay, there you go. I was wondering about that. I laughed the first time I saw that. So let me see. So did you had a really nice musical score for that. Who did that? It fit very well.
Thank you. That was me. That was another thing that I really like to do in my productions. So I work primarily as a writer-director, but coming up through that really indie guerrilla way, like, not going to film school, I sort of had to learn these skills. And I've been playing music since I was a kid. And so at the same time that I was obsessing over how I can make visual effects, After Effects, I was also looking up Cubase and figuring out how to mix music. And I think the mix is a bit bad, but compose music and perform music. And yeah, that was, I think, one of my my flaws as a sort of director moving forward is actually a reticence to relegate jobs to other people, because I want to do those jobs.
Right, I understand. I do have a tendency to do the same thing, except I used to do live sound. I had my own band, and I bought the PA for the band. And so when we weren't playing, I'd rent it out for other bands. And I would certainly relegate wrapping up mic cords and stuff to people.
Yeah, I'm happy to relegate that.
Yeah, if they hung around long enough, I'd teach them how to mix and everything. That's what's, and I paid them as well, of course. Mm-hmm. So we have a question. So what did you worked, did you do the editing for this too?
The editing was I did the bulk of the editing. Yeah, we had a first pass edit done by Kevin Luck, who's part of the late night team. So
Okay.
he was sort of he did the assembly edit. I think Chris maybe did a pass, but then yeah, it kind of came to me and I worked through it.
So you don't use Final Cut Pro 10, correct? But Chris does, I know.
Yeah, Chris does do it, and he's used a little bit of Premiere recently because I think I've kind of thrust it upon him because as said, what got me into the kind of industry was the possibilities of After Effects of all things. So I always had a kind of Adobe focus.
Right.
And actually, I was saying I do music in Cubase. The reason I do music in Cubase is because when I was 17 or so, 18, I bought a little audio box, a little PreSonus audio box, and it came with a free copy of Cubase. So that's what I learned, and I've never looked back. And it's probably not the best software for making music, but it's what I learned when I was young. So I'm kind of trapped in that now. And I don't mean to use the word trap, but similarly with After Effects and Premiere, I got it early, so it's just been kind of where it landed.
No, I like I'm a Final Cut Pro guy because I started using it from version 1. But before that, I was a Premiere on the Mac because Final Cut wasn't available when I first started. So I used Premiere. Back in those days, I liked it, but then they dropped support for the Mac, and I've definitely been a Mac guy ever since then. Yeah, they dropped support for the Mac. Yes, for like a year and a half, 2 years. Avid did actually as well, and for a short period of time. And they're saying it's because of the Power PC versus Intel chip stuff. But in any event, they pissed Steve Jobs off. And of all the people in the world, he's one of the people that I don't want to make mad for whatever reason. So anyway, then that's when Final Cut Pro came out shortly thereafter, and I've been on it ever since. So, a lot of Final Cut Pro people, they talk about tracks versus not tracks. I like tracks. I use them in Logic all the time, and I really like them. However, I like the magnetic timeline as well. Right? I like both. There's a way that other people have done it as well, that you can anchor a track in Final Cut Pro and have a fixed track and the magnetic timeline both.
Right. Best of both worlds.
Yeah. So the only group that has that now is LumaFusion on the iPad. They have exactly that. They have tracks you can lock, and they have the magnetic timeline as well. And I really like both of those. I'm not a no tracks for me. I love them in Logic. I mean, I don't know how you do complex audio without having just, all the kick drum, because I cut the kick drum up a lot of times in one track. I don't want it jumping up and all over the place in different places. And
yeah, exactly.
So
yeah, no arguments here about that. I mean, I'm a Luddite when it comes to magnetic. I've never really used it, but I look at it and I'm like, oh, this looks intuitive, and it looks. I don't mean this in a bad way. Like it looks simple. It looks like it. Oh yeah, it looks like it makes sense. I've already said intuitive. I don't know. I'm trying to find more synonyms when I found the right one at the beginning.
Sure.
But yeah, I think I'd struggle on a Final Cut thing just because I find as I'm getting older, unfortunately, my capacity to learn new software is harder. I know the adage of old dogs and new tricks is kind of hokey, but I'm finding it to be awfully true.
Well, I don't disagree with you, and I'll tell you, in my case, I come from an audio background, a music background. Way before I did video editing, I had reel-to-reel decks, and I went from that to digital audio, digital performer at the time, and I am somewhat of the same. I don't want to learn everything. I mean, people talk about motion. I don't want to learn motion. I want to concentrate on Final Cut Pro and Logic. And I say this all the time. I'll pay Mark Spencer to develop a plugin for me in Motion, $29 whenever he does that. I'd rather do that. I just don't have the patience to learn that stuff. And it's the same with coloring. I'm not a colorist. I'm not, I do basic, coloring on my stuff, but I'm not. Nothing's going out to film. And if it was, I would send it out. So did you actually do your audio in Cubase, or do you send it out Pro Tools?
I did. Yeah, I did all the music for the film in Cubase, and I did the sound design in Premiere. Which
really?
Which is, it's pretty slapdash and thrown together. But I think the way I do sound design is pretty. I don't know. In a way, I think if I to mix anything, it's just to almost mix it for a phone. I've done sound designs with other people who are doing sound designs that I've been in there working on stuff, and we're mixing it at 9.1, and that's awesome. But I'm like, nobody literally in the world is going to listen to this at 9.1. Like, what are we doing here? It's good fun when you're in the room, but that's a bit overkill.
So you, how many editors did they have? Are you an editor? I know you're a director for this, and you're executive producer, which means you got the money, right? Is that what executive producers do?
I think executive producer means a lot of things, and a lot of things.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
Not I have the money, unless we're talking about the donated time, I think.
So, are you an editor as well, primarily there, or
not primarily, but I usually edit all my own stuff. So, for example, the biggest project probably Late Night Films has done, and then I've done also there's a series called The Wizards of Oz, and that was co-edited by Chris and I. So we sort of would send edits back and forth, and pull and push, and Chris probably had a more objective view of the edit because he wasn't in every other shot. Which was probably my ego as the actor in that show as well. I was probably like, no, this take doesn't work, but I look pretty good, so let's use that.
Exactly. I understand completely. So how many editors do they have at Late Night, typically?
Well, it's a bit of a thing where everybody can wear, everybody kind of wears every hat because it's just the nature of the beast. Like Nick Collar, who's one of the producers there, certainly I don't think would have thought of himself as an editor, but just to kind of make ends meet, in terms of some of the corporate stuff coming in, Nick has become quite a good editor. And same way that Nick's also become somebody that can shoot, because the more hats you wear, just the better it is. But I think in terms of like proper editors, Chris is definitely the kind of proper editor there. Obviously, he's got a big post background. And I've edited for other people, but I edit a lot, but it's always kind of my stuff. I think if I'd struggle editing for too many more people. I'll do little things here and there if I need to.
Sure. Sure. We got a question from a friend, Simeon Villani. He says, I have a question for you both. Yesterday evening here in Italy, I watched a program about video editing, and they said that Final Cut Pro 10 isn't a professional application, which we hear all the time. I'd like to know what your opinion is.
Well, I think you'd be more equipped to deal with this.
Well, I mean, as far as a professional application, I mean, we've already seen Final Cut Pro, Listen, when Final Cut Pro 10.0 came out and everybody was online, battling back and forth, I don't get involved in that stuff. I'm just not interested. I mean, battling on the internet, that's just, arguing on the internet is just ridiculous. It's bad enough arguing in person, nobody agrees. People come into an argument from this side and this side, and they leave the same sides. They don't change each other's minds. They never change each other's mind, very rarely. So doing it on the internet is even worse. It amplifies it. But of course, it's professional. It's already done major films.
Yeah,
it's already done in Focus and with I forget what his name is, and also recently we did the Banker.
I saw we did an episode on that.
Yeah, exactly, and Final Cut. So I mean, it's not any question about whether it's professional. Of course, it's professional. It doesn't have all the features that the Avid has, I would say, in Hollywood. It has a very big stronghold. And I'm not sure that the Final Cut Pro team is that concerned about Hollywood as far as making it a top priority. Of course, there's a segment that they're going to cater to, some things. But it's not the main focus of Final Cut Pro 10, and it doesn't have to be, because Hollywood... I mean, the films versus Netflix versus other, TV shows have become films now, right? Netflix is making films for TV shows. When I saw True Detectives, what a fantastic series that was. You had Woody Harrelson, and, and all these movie stars are coming to television shows. So it's changing. I guess a lot of those are still done in Hollywood. Not now, though. So what's going on in Australia right now?
Well, I mean, right now, at the very moment, absolutely nothing. But usually, it's interesting. I think a lot of stuff gets filmed here, and a lot of stuff that's American productions shoot down here because we've got tax incentives that make it very profitable.
Right.
for American productions to come down, which is great because it employs huge tax incentives, but they employ Australian crew, Australian workers, and use Australian places. In terms of a kind of terrestrial films, I don't think tend to do very well, unfortunately. I think that a lot of people aren't too aware of the Australian films that get released, and I think there's a whole host of reasons why that is, and some of them are a little more opaque than others. But I think what I've been most excited about recently in terms of Australian film is The Invisible Man, which we don't think of as an Australian film because it's a Blumhouse production, but
Okay.
written and directed by an Australian, shot in Sydney with an Australian crew, Australian producers. There's Jason Blum on top, but there's a lot of Australian producers involved as well. And shot in a low budget, was the #1 film in the world for a couple of weeks. Maybe possibly the last #1 film in the world. Who knows how this is all going to shake out? But that was a tremendous moment of sort of pride for our local industry and what we can achieve when we're kind of given a chance. But I think there's a self-loathing when it comes to Australians and their own attitudes to seeing themselves on screen. And this might come off as a strange point, but I have heard so many people critique the Australian accent performed in a film by an Australian actor. Like they didn't realize it was an Australian actor, and they assumed an American was doing a bad Australian accent. But I'm like, no, that's a real Australian doing that accent.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it shows how foreign our own accent sounds to us coming out of a screen, particularly in like a big movie.
Okay.
And it's weird. We have the self-loathing thing. I don't know where it comes from.
I find the Australian accent, appealing. I like it. I love the Leftovers, which the last season was filmed in Australia, Sydney, I think, or somewhere.
I haven't actually seen it.
That's Damon Lindelof's TV series he had. It's excellent. I mean, of course, Lindelof is from Lost, which is one of my favorite TV shows. And the Leftovers was excellent. The last season was filmed in Australia.
Right. They just shot Preacher here recently-ish. So that was a Melbourne one.
Okay.
That's a little rarer because most of our stuff goes to Sydney. But I mean, they had formerly Fox Studios. I think it might still be called that, but it is now a Disney, obviously owned place, and that's up in Sydney. And they shoot massive films there. I was on set there for Alien. Gosh, what's it? Alien Covenant. Shot there. They're shooting the Marvel movies up there now. Shot several up there. So lots of big films come through, but in terms of actually like Australian films, it's tricky to name them. One comes along now and then which kind of breaks through not only internationally but also really becomes a big talking point nationally. Things like Animal Kingdom, but that was over a decade ago now.
Right. So let's go back to stop motion because I'm curious. So is that shot as a photograph, every frame, versus actual video or film? Is everyone an actual photograph? One?
Yeah, shot on a stills camera.
Stills camera, okay.
Yeah. And well, to give you some more context as to how we shot that. So, stop motion is obviously, well, it's expensive, it's incredibly time consuming, and we really didn't want to waste any time of our animation team or to get anything animated, beautiful animation, and then have to cut it. So the way we filmed it was we actually shot each setup at least twice, once with me performing the character as a live action character,
okay,
and then once where we mimic the camera move on a blank.
I see.
Yeah, on a blank. Sorry, it's late here. Blank plate. That's what it is. And so then we edited the film entirely with my performance as the character and called like absolute cemented edit lock because we don't have the budget or time to make any mistakes here. And then we gave that to our animation team, and Samuel animated our character Phil, the puppet, not over my performance because you can't just one-to-one animate a natural performance to this character because it has to be sort of interpreted with a slightly more, like if you could think about it, and it depends how the video feed is, if I were moving from left to right, I might move like that, but an animated character kind of goes, there's sort of like tweening and bits and bobs.
He's more mechanical. He's more mechanical.
Yeah.
Rather than fluid.
So Sam really brought to it, Samuel, our animator, sorry, really imbued this with so much emotion that was certainly lacking in my performance. But then basically we had our edit, and one by one the shots were getting switched out of my performance to the animated performance, and it was like watching myself become a skeleton, like a time lapse of my eventual fate. It was great.
Yeah, I especially enjoyed when the eyes would move in the skeleton when he was surprised or something or sad.
Yeah, we had I think 13 different facial expressions is what
Okay.
Phil had. So his mouth didn't really move. There was no real articulation there. There were a couple of shots where we kind of could tweak it moving a little bit, but
Right,
he
right.
has a sort of dismembered upper chunk of his face where we would switch out different eyebrow shakes
I see. I see.
to do it. Yeah.
Now, is that those still images? Are they brought in as the image sequence? Is that how you edit them into video?
Yeah, so Sam would capture those both as high-resolution JPEGs and as camera RAWs. But truthfully, we realized JPEGs work fine. They're a higher resolution than what we were shooting because the stills camera kind of allowed us to blow that
Sure.
up. And
Sure.
the JPEGs actually look fantastic, and they just ran a lot faster. And all the comps were done on my computer. So it was just like, well, the JPEGs are working fine. Cool, let's go for it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. I haven't. I mean, I might do a little stop animation thing, but I'm not 6 months. I mean, they just move so microscopically each time, and you got to get the angle right and the lighting right. It's just like, whoa.
Well, yeah, I'm a little more post focused. Like I do a lot of our visual effects, and I'm quite used to the post world. And obviously, stop motion animation is something, it's still post production, I suppose. But because it's practical and because it's really there, and it's something that I'd never done before, it still feels like magic to me. I haven't it hasn't lost its luster. Every time I would see Sam working or get a new shot sent to me on Digital Pigeon, it was mind blowing. It was just, honestly, it was like delightful, which is a nice feeling to have.
It most certainly is. I worked at the National Archives in D.C., like I said, and I never, when I started working there, I was went down as an editor, and I remember the interview. The guy said, "Well, I see on your resume you're Final Cut Pro, Apple trainer, and certified and stuff." And he said, "We have an Avid upstairs. That's what we have in the edit suite." And I said to myself, well, I can learn Avid, especially on the job getting paid for it. It's not a problem. And then he said on a PC, and I said, oh, I don't know anything about PCs whatsoever. I said, that's fine. I said, I'll learn. So I did. I remember in those days, it was about 10, 12 years ago, I didn't have a whole lot of training for Avid, so I just went online and just downloaded every single PDF I could get of Avid, everything. I mean, I had a binder full of printed PDFs, and then I said, okay, this is how I do it in Final Cut. Where is this how do I do this in Avid? And I'm searching through, and I'll circle it, and I'll make notes and everything. And that went fine for a while, and then the PC crapped out. It was a graphics card, and I don't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to fix it, so I got this Mac from downstairs in the theater. It might have been PowerPC. No, I don't know. Was it G5? I don't remember, but I think it was Final Cut Pro 7. And I got that to come up there, and then everything changed, and I just switched that to Final Cut Pro 10 up there. But what I expected when I went down to the National Archives, I was expecting to edit films, government stuff and everything, but we had a theater that had live presentations. We did 100 live presentations every year in the theater, and also we had the rotunda, which we had presidents there, and I did the live sound because everybody else was scared to, they don't know anything about feedback and frequencies and stuff, and I did live sound and introduced Michelle Obama there. She was there one time, and other people, but I got to meet Steven Spielberg. He came to one of the presentations because I'm the audio guy, so I mic him up in the green room. I'm sitting there just, micing him up. Him and Ken Burns run the show, and after I don't say anything. I just do my job. Thank you, sir, Lee. But at the end, when I went and get the mics off them after the show, Spielberg spoke to me because it's just three of us in the room. Spielberg's on the left, Ken Burns on the right, and me. And I walked in. I said, "I got your microphones. Unmic you." And he said, "How do you think it went?" And I said, wow, now I can talk. So I told him it was one of the best presentations we ever had down there. And Spielberg goes, well, that's because of this guy over here asking the great questions. I said, no, I think it was both of you. You had some great stories and great questions both. But I met J.J. Walker. You know him from Good Times? There was a
Not
TV show in
offhand, I know the
America.
name.
Yeah, J.J. Walker. He was from Good Times. And I met some odd people down there. George McGovern I met down there. Politicians.
Was George McGovern, was he like a Democratic nominee? Or am I crazy on that?
He ran for president against Richard Nixon.
Yeah, and didn't he had like he was polling really well and then like lost every state. Is that right?
Yeah, well, yeah, because there was in those days, it was like the Watergate thing was postponed till after the election. So, but he turned out he was a war hero, and they painted him as a dove. Is one of the things, they painted him as a dove, and I found out in this book lecture he was a war hero. He was a decorated war hero, a pilot or whatever. But anyway. So politicians and book authors, what we typically had presentations down there, and we'd shoot multicam and stuff, and then I'd get it upstairs. If it was, they would mix it live. They'd have one version to mix live, but I would keep the multicams upstairs and have those available, sync them up and everything if I wanted to do something more specific. We had one of our highest rated ones, which has a few 100,000 views, was there was a time when Elvis Presley came into Washington unannounced with this handler, and he said, "I want to go meet President Nixon."
I've seen the photo. He had
yes.
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 Does he have a gun on him or something?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about it. We have the original Constitution, we have the original Bill of Rights, and other the actual documents, Declaration of Independence. That's the most famous, perhaps, and the most requested photograph from the National Archives is Richard Nixon and Elvis Presley, by far. It's not even close. That's the most requested one we have. So yeah, so he got. He got in. He went there first, and they sent him back. They said, "We'll see if we can make this happen," and then they made it happen. But we had a presentation where the two people that were involved with making that meeting, Elvis Presley's handler and the person on Nixon's staff, met on our stage for the first time. I think it was 40 years at that point. They hadn't seen each other for 40 years, and they met on stage to recount exactly what happened that day. It was a great one. It's got like 100 and some thousand, 200 and some thousand views. Most of the shows don't get that much. So,
well, they made a film about it.
Yes, they did.
Of that meeting, and was one of those guys who was at your presentation. Was he played by Colin Hanks in the film? Colin Hanks played some character in there who is instrumental in the meeting.
Well, there's two of them, one from Nixon's crew and one from Elvis Presley's handler. Elvis Presley didn't even have any credit card or any cash. Right. He had to borrow money from this guy to get around in taxis and stuff. But the gun thing was this. Yes, Elvis Presley took a gun into the White House with bullets. Now, it wasn't a loaded gun. It was a gun in a plaque. The gun was up top, and the bullets were down below. But he took a gun and bullets into the White House to give to Nixon. So right. that would happen nowadays. That exactly. Well, that was exactly. And the other thing was that Nixon, he did give Presley some kind of a fake badge.
Yeah, he wanted to be deputized or something. Wasn't that right?
It was something weird. And Nixon said, "Well, can we do that? Can we do that?" Well, we can give him a badge, but it doesn't mean anything. And so he gave him a badge, and Presley carried it around for a while.
Yeah, I had heard that Nixon was somewhat desperate. This is a fun tangent, but I had heard that Nixon didn't have he wasn't cool as a president. He didn't have sort of the celebrity endorsements. And when Elvis came, he was like, "Oh, this is my chance to get hit,"
Well, it just, I mean, are you going to turn Elvis Presley down? He wants to meet you. I mean, I don't care who you are. You're not going to turn. Oh, I also met Prince Charles. He was down there. He was on a tour, and they brought him in there for speaking or something. I got to meet him. All these people I never in a million years thought I would have met. And I got to meet him because I worked down there for a while. I'm not there anymore. I got tired of driving into Washington every day, 3 hours a day, round trip. And now, with the coronavirus, I keep saying that I'm glad I'm not on that Petri dish of a metro every day, for an hour, just because you're completely contained with strangers and you can't be 6 feet apart and you can't not be breathing the same air. So I'm really glad now, especially. So obviously it's affected the world, but it hasn't. So Australia got hit with the fires first.
Yeah, which was
horrendous.
really scary. I live really suburban, so really close to Melbourne City, and the fires were usually in more rural areas. Well, basically was so. I certainly wasn't affected in any meaningful way, except for I was up in Sydney for a work thing, and last minute my flight got grounded. All the flights were grounded because the smoke was so thick in the air in Sydney. I couldn't, nobody was flying back to Melbourne except for one plane. And actually, Chris got on that plane because I was up there on a work trip, and I thought I wouldn't want to get on the one plane that's decided, no, we're doing it, let's go. I'm already a jittery flyer. And then we went away for New Year's, kind of into the country, and obviously we weren't affected really at all. But every 5 minutes we were checking the app. Is the fire getting closer? Do we need to leave? Is there an evacuation warning? And it was
right.
quite a somber feeling, I suppose, to what was a celebratory time of year. To just when you live in the cities, the thing in Australia is the bushfires sort of do happen every year. It's
right.
Progressively worse as the planet kind of heats up. And this year was absolutely the worst that I can really remember as an adult. And but there is that feeling that obviously intellectually, it's this horror show, that it somewhat feels. It doesn't feel tangible because you never see it. And this was the year that even, we went away for New Year's, and just the smoke in the air was so thick, even though we were so far out. It was such a safe zone according to all the news and everything, that it was a horror show. And then now it's been an odd year.
Well, I've gone to the Final Cut FCPX Creative Summit in Cupertino every year for the last 3 years. And the last 2 years, they've had, the 2 years ago was really bad with the fires, the smoke and stuff. Mm-hmm. They told everybody to bring those N95 masks if they had any issues. I brought them, but I didn't use them. It wasn't quite that bad for me. Jeez. And then last year they had warnings again. It was the same thing. They were canceling flights and stuff. So you use Premiere. Do you have any problems with Premiere nowadays? I keep hearing problems about crashings and stuff and weirdness. I mean, all of them have it. All the analysts have different issues. Final Cut Pro certainly does.
Yeah, I've certainly had some over the years, but no. Recently, I haven't really been running into it, which is good because we've been coming to the tail end of this project, and I've been editing mainly these days. Like little trailers to promote the film and, bits and bobs like that, or just re-exporting. And it's taken so long. I work on PC, but finally, it was a couple of years ago we got ProRes support. So I can finally export to ProRes. And that might seem like a small thing, but when we're exchanging workflows, because Chris and the rest of Late Night all work on Macs and I work on PC, that actually being able to use ProRes is great. We use for The Wizards of Oz as a format, as a kind of equivalent. We use the GoPro Cineform format because Chris reckoned that was kind of a
in between,
a close approximation.
Yeah, okay.
From a PC point of view, that wasn't like too ginormous, and that was our biggest process ever. And essentially, we had a post team of 2 on that, and it was just Cineform ProRes, back and forth.
So Chris doesn't really do anything, does he? He doesn't really do anything.
No, Chris is the busiest man I know. Chris is a man who I don't know. I think he's masochistic. If he's not busy, he will find ways to be busy. It's crazy. And now that he's a father, I think he's still managing to make it all work. It's a terrifying thing.
I met Chris at NAB last year, a year ago.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah, he came over with Tangent. The panels, is that what they were? He was writing
code to map, so use those panels with Final Cut. Is that right?
Well, a couple different devices, yes, not just Final Cut, with his Command Post app.
Yeah, that's right. Which was basically kind of what Andrew Kramer wrote for After Effects, that kind of shortcut thing that he made. If anybody's aware of that Chris made for Final Cut. Chris and I went to NAB the year before that, or maybe 2 years before that, because we were doing a presentation on our post production workflow. Adobe had us over there for that.
Okay.
working on kind of 4K when that was somewhat of a newer thing, kind of like an indie 4K, very visual effects heavy production that was The Wizards of Oz. And that was fun. I was like, cool, Vegas for the first time. This will be great. And I think it was on the first day we went to our hotel room and I was in the shower and suddenly my back gave out for the first time. And I was like, Chris, and Chris had to come in
Wow.
and help me off the floor. And we had to go. And I was then just on it was what was supposed to be kind of like a fun, NAB tech focused trip with a bit of silliness became Chris and I walking down the strip, and every 10 feet I just go, bah! My back would give out and Chris would have to catch me. It was a nightmare, but much more of a nightmare for him, I think, having to sort of, father me around. He hadn't had a kid yet, so maybe it was a good practice.
Well, that's true. So you're young to have back problems.
I know, yeah.
I'm a runner, and thank God I haven't had back problems, because I would stop running if I had back problems. But I was out this morning running before this came up. I went out for my run real quick and came back. But yeah, you're young to have. Is it genetic?
I don't know. It's the only really time that it's happened. It hasn't really happened since. I think just something must have given up. I probably not helped by the fact that we'd just flown from Australia.
That's what I was wondering. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I had one trip. I go to California for this Creative Summit, and I go for NAB typically. Other than that, I'm on the East Coast, the opposite side of the United States. And the one trip I was on, it was like a 5-hour trip, and I had my back twinged at me. And I didn't have my medicine with my carry-on bag. I had it in the overhead luggage Never did that again because I needed that medicine. I didn't know if I was going to be able to get up because the same thing, sitting in that same position, even though I get up and walk in the aisle a little bit, sitting in that same position for a long time. And your flight is what, 24 hours or something like that? It's ridiculous. 18 hours? It's a long flight.
It's too long. It's too long. I can't remember the length because I usually, again, I'm a nervous flyer. What I'll usually do is just have a few scotches and try and sit through the whole thing with varying degrees of success. But yeah, it's a big one. So
how are people, all the industries, I guess, in Australia are suffering from the coronavirus situation, just like in the United States? Everything's just come to almost to a complete standstill.
Yeah.
How are people's attitudes? I mean, are they getting past it? And then I wonder how it's going to change them, how their attitudes are going to change, because it's changed my attitude about the world. And I've often said, and I always made this reference, that I don't want the UFOs to land until I'm on my deathbed, because I thought that the UFOs landing would be this singular thing that the entire world would focus on. The entire world would focus on the one thing. And it's happened with the coronavirus. Yeah. Everybody, the entire world is focused on one thing, and it's affected everybody.
It's wild. This must have been what the news, maybe not on a global level, must have been what the news was like decades ago, a generation ago, because these days there's so much media that everybody can kind of choose whatever news they want to see that already kind of fits their worldview and just consume. Yes. But back in the day, obviously, there were 3 channels or whatever. You had no choice, really.
Right.
It's interesting to think what people's attitudes will be going forward. I mean, my concern is that I think we've been more cautious than the American response has been, from what I can glean from the news, in terms of our government's messaging has been, I think, a little clearer, and we were a little more cautious. You were saying if you were in Washington, you'd be catching that train. Is that true? Are people still going into work and catching trains?
No. I stopped that 3 years ago. I got tired of the drive. But if I was working, I would still be riding the metro for part of my commute.
Right. So people are still commuting to work.
I don't know if the government is essential. I mean, they're not essential as far as the public's concerned, but as far as themselves are concerned, I don't know. Part of the government has to be there. I mean, obviously, the Congress and stuff. So the archives itself is shut down completely. Only the archivist is in there, from what I understand. It's just maybe a little bit of maintenance and stuff. So it's way down, whatever the thing is. But so did you stop travel from foreign countries coming in, like China, for example? Did you ban that?
Yes. I'm not exactly sure on the timeline of that, but international travel in and out is banned at the moment. I think the only international travel that's happening, I could be wrong on this, was that Qantas announced a couple of days ago that they're going to start limited international flights, which is only to get expats back home. Or rather, there's some tourists trapped on tour
Sure.
ships and cruise ships and that sort of thing.
Yes.
But regarding your question on how is this going to change people moving forward, this might be cynical, but I'm worried about people's attention spans and everybody's laziness. And we've all been isolated now for, I think, 4 weeks. It's just gone. We're entering our 5th week, I believe. And I'm getting a sense from the people that I'm still in touch with via Skype and Google Hangouts and that sort of thing, that people are kind of like, oh, I'm bored. I've already isolated. I'm ready to start. I think people are going to start sneaking out and kind of breaking the rules because they feel like, well, look, I've done it for 4 weeks. I'm not sick yet. So that's going to be interesting to do, because at this stage, I believe it's only it's only essential workers, and you're allowed to leave to do exercise, and even then, only in a group of 2, no more.
Okay.
And even be distanced the whole time. So
Right.
Me and a friend went to go play tennis the other day. We thought that's exercise where you're well away from one another.
Sure,
And
sure.
we visited every single tennis court in our kind of feasible area to visit, and they're full with people lining up because I think people realize it's an easy way to exercise. No basketball teams are playing right now. No soccer, anything like that. Yeah.
Well, I guess I meant how vulnerable, it seems like we are. It's just the way this came so fast, even in a period of a month or so, that all these industries, no sports. Can you imagine in January saying, "Oh, we're not going to have any sports this year. No major football, no major basketball." I mean, no, it's unfathomable for the most part. Hollywood's going to shut down completely. No
wild.
filmmaking. Network is going to stop. Netflix is going to stop filming. It doesn't seem. Airlines are going to be shut down. There's going to be no weddings, no funerals. You can't have funerals.
That's horrible.
That is the worst.
Sad.
Yeah. So it just seems like we're so vulnerable to that now. But I hope. I'm an optimist by heart. I always have been my entire life. I hope that we've learned something from this that's going to prepare us for some event in the future. That's what I'm hoping that we could get out of this.
Yeah, I hope it's somewhat sort of sobering, and
Yes.
and it makes us kind of revalue some things. It's interesting that who we have deemed as essential workers are often the people that are really maligned by our structures. Grocery store workers that we think of, I think,
Blue collar,
broadly speaking, blue collar, kind of trodden on a lot, and yet at the end of the day,
They're the
it's
heroes.
grocery store workers, it's delivery drivers,
Trash
they
people.
Absolutely.
Trash people. Absolutely. I mean, I'm a blue collar worker. I was a carpenter for years and years and years before I got involved with video editing. So I've always been as partial to blue collar workers. I've seen the way they. I know their mentality. I used to operate heavy equipment when I was much younger, on highways and stuff. And then I transitioned into commercial carpentry. So I've always been a part of that. Yeah.
Like on not necessarily the other end of the spectrum, I think that being people who work in the artistic field as well, and other people will be making this point, obviously, that they can seem a little maligned, or it can be cited as frivolous or something. But what's everybody doing right now? Everybody's locked at home and they're watching 12 hours of art every day, and so I think it's going to be like hopefully allowing people to, particularly in Australia where we don't have like a huge film industry for our own sort of content and our public broadcast to the ABC. The government's always, particularly when we sort of have a more right-wing government in power as we do now, always trying to cut funding from the ABC, which I think of as a great public service. And they're always trying to cut out funding, and it's happening more and more. And again, what's happening now? Everybody's watching the ABC, not just for entertainment, but it's how we get our most impartial news. It's where people are going to actually find out how the virus is evolving. And yeah, it's kind of in a horrible way as a cynic. It's something quite validating about the stuff, but also really depressing.
Yeah, yeah. So do you think you're ever? I think Final Cut Pro 10.5 is going to change your mind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think you're going to look over Chris's shoulder and say, "Hey, what are you doing there?"
Well, maybe.
Say, let me give it a shot.
I'm actually having this call right now on a MacBook, which would have been somewhat sacrilege to me a year ago. I've been PC through and through because I came up as a gamer, which is always much more of a PC thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now I'm on my first Mac. It's an old friend gave me a Mac, and I'm using it. It's mainly a writing machine, but I kind of love it. I'm now understanding the interface. I'm understanding why when you make something maximum, it goes to the other screen and you've got to go over there and then come back.
Right.
Which I still find a little confusing, but it's starting to make sense. So,
Yeah, so
maybe I am a little open to change more so than
I think you will. I think 10.5 is going to change your mind. And I have no idea what 10.5 is or when it comes out. I have no idea. It'll be out in 2020, but I don't think, who knows. Maybe WWDC, don't know. But I got one of the first Mac Pros in December. Mm-hmm. People say, well, some people say you don't need a Mac Pro for what you do. I said, why are you worried about what I buy? That's the most ridiculous reason to say something. I've loved the Mac Pro form factor since day one, since the old Mac Pros. They're just so easy to work on. This one's so much better. So I saved up over the summer, and by August I had funded for a Mac Pro. Not the $52,000 one, of course. Just I think I paid like $12,000 something. But it's a great machine. It's the best Mac I've ever owned. So I really like it.
Well, that's good. I could probably do with a computer upgrade. I've been using the same system since we did Wizards, which was editing like 6 years ago. Right. But it still does me pretty well. It's all right. It still plays all the games as well. So winning in that respect.
Absolutely. So do we miss anything?
Well, I don't know. Is there anything else you wanted to kind of talk about? I just realized
You had three different hats on for this film. You had executive producer, director, and what was the other one?
Well, I was composer, and
on the credits there was something, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Richard. Can I just pop off? I was between 20 seconds.
Absolutely.
Is that okay?
Absolutely. Sure.
Sorry,
absolutely. I'll put myself on. Here we go. So we're going to end this pretty quickly. So everybody. Let me just check while I'm here to see what's going on with the App Store. See if there's anything going exciting on the App Store. I always check this to see. Let me see here. App Store updates. No updates. Look at this. No updates from the App Store. Not yet.
Sorry about that. Just realized I was about to run out of charge.
Yeah, I just went on the App Store to see if Final Cut Pro 10.5 came out while we were on still.
Oh,
I check it every time I come on this. I had one yesterday. I messed up the broadcast I did yesterday morning. My fault. I didn't. I go through multiple layers of software. I use Ecamm Live as the main what we're working with now, but I'm also working with Skype, and then I have something that broadcasts it to YouTube, Facebook, Periscope Live all at the same time called Restream.io, and I stopped one account and had a new account, and they were going to my old account, which was degraded because I stopped paying for it. I didn't realize it till after the episode. So
yeah, right. You blew your money on that MacBook Pro.
Yeah, exactly. But they had so I came back and just did look. I'm gonna test this out because since I got it straightened out, I'm gonna test it. So I came on in the afternoon just to testing, and so people stopped over. But I always check the App Store just to make sure because look, you might not know this since you're not involved with the community that much, but typical. So we have 10.0 to 10.1, 10.1 to 10.2, 10.2 to 3 and 4, and now we're waiting on 5. The typical update cycle between those whole number versions is 16 months. We're now at 27 months.
What's taking them so long?
Exactly. 10.4 to 10.5 is at 27 months, almost 28 months. So something's going on. It's not a regular update. And it's not the coronavirus because they were already at 27 months before that hit. Because I'm keeping track of this. So anytime now in 2020, we can expect 10.5. If they want to, sometimes Apple typically introduce the new version of Final Cut that's that big at an event. They've used NAB and they've used the FCPX Creative Summit in the fall for the typical announcements of those big versions. But they didn't do NAB last year, and they didn't do Creative Summit, which was somewhat disappointing. So the next event that would make any kind of sense is WWDC in June, or the anniversary of Final Cut Pro, which is June the 21st. That'll be the 10-year anniversary. So they usually don't do the anniversaries of Final Cut, but WWDC every once in a while they'll mention Final Cut, or like last year they had the Mac Pro there. They introduced that, and they think they showed some Final Cut stuff. But since they didn't do NAB, it might be WWDC, but they can do it any time. They don't need an event. But if they want an event, WWDC would make sense. That if they don't do WWDC, the next major event is the fall, which is the FCPX Greatest Summit, which is not until November. And then at that point, you're talking 30-plus months.
Well, but now with the coronavirus thing, you might not be able to do these big public events anyhow.
Well, they're doing the WWDC virtual this year.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
they already announced that. Yeah, so that could be fine. But you're right. But I hope in November we can get to the Greatest Summit, because that's absolutely my favorite, because that's all the Final Cut Pro. Philip Hodges calls it the family reunion, and it basically is. All the Final Cut Pro people concentrated in the same hotel for like 3 or 4 days, just talking Final Cut Pro stuff and going out to dinner and everything. It's a great event. So I hopefully by then things are straightened out, or they got the vaccines or whatever the heck they got.
Many reasons. It's great to hear you talk about it and being so excited and being like, oh, they've got to be doing this, they've got to be doing this. It reminds me of like people that are huge fans of, say, like Star Wars or something, like, oh, the new episode's coming out, Luke's going to do this and Leia's going to do that, and you're like,
right.
Maybe they'll have a new non-magnetic.
The thing is, first off, the audio, in my opinion, audio needs work in Final Cut, so I expect them to be doing work on the audio. Final Cut Pro 10 doesn't have a master fader. There's no master volume control for audio.
Right, okay.
Let alone, people are talking about the mixer. They're talking about not having a mixer because they use rolls, but they could have a rolls-based version of it, but they have no master volume control. It doesn't make sense. It does, all these times. So hopefully they're working on audio and giving us whatever version of a rolls-based mixer that they see. Because, listen, of all the things about Final Cut Pro you can say, it absolutely is innovative. It's not using a traditional, they're not looking in the rear view mirror and saying this is how traditional NLEs operate with tracks. They're looking in the future. Whether you like it or not, it's still a futuristic version of an NLE. So we'll see what they come up with. But 27 months, hey, listen, they're working from home now. That's no excuse to slack off, right?
You hear that, Final Cut team?
They're doing something. It's over 10 months, 11 months past the mean, and it's still not here. It's going to be 28 months in a couple of days.
They must really be trying to get that master fader to work.
They're doing something. It's not a normal update. So I presume they're reworking things. There's something like from 10.0 to 10.1, they reworked. They had 2 separate folders. They had events and projects and 2 separate folders. Then when 10.1 came out, they went to the consolidated library. So that took a lot of work. 10.0 to 10.1 was 30 months.
Right.
Every other one was average of 16 months. One was 14, one was 16, one was 18. This one's 27, 28 months at this point. So,
well,
anyway, I am looking forward to it. And I'm curious as to what they're going to throw on us, and I hope it's great stuff. And I think at that point you're going to look over Chris's shoulder and say, "What are you doing there? Let me give that a shot." I think whatever they're doing, that's going to happen.
Continue my transition into becoming a Mac guy. That might be
you certainly can do both. I'm not a PC guy. I started on PCs, but I just like the Mac a lot better. Of course, everything has strengths and weaknesses. And I have not been on Windows 10, never on 10. I'm talking about Windows 95, 98.
Windows ME.
Yeah, ME was horrible from what I understand. That was like really...
Yeah, I think I skipped that one. I certainly had 95 and 98. Gosh, that's thinking back to, the big beige towers. Those were the days.
The first Mac I had, some of my friends go back into the 80s and stuff. I didn't have any Mac until the late 90s. And the first one I got was a beige G3. And it wasn't at the tower, it was the flat horizontal thing. This is before the iMac. It was before the iMac.
The iMac was the bubble? Was that the...
Yeah, with colors and stuff, right. And the G3 that came out after mine was the blue one, the blue one that had the stuff. But I had just the traditional PC-looking beige G3, and I had a company in California configured for me in a loaded Premiere. That's what I had, the no Final Cut Pro at the time, and they put loaded Premiere. I knew nothing about computers. I didn't need computers to run my recording studio. I had, because everything was manual. You splice the tape with the demagnetized razor blade and put leader on it, and that's how you did edits and stuff.
That blows my mind, man. That's alchemy to me.
It does.
That's magic.
It's amazing. Well, you had to demagnetize the razor blade, because if you didn't, you could create a click at this thing. And you put a little mark on the back of the tape, and you just spliced it, and you check it and see if it wasn't right. Then you do a little tighter, or whatever. Because paper leader, you do it at the beginning and do it between songs, had no noise, nothing. When the head hit paper, there was nothing there. Complete silence. That's why you did that. That's why you didn't just use, tape, which has a little bit of noise. I'm actually going to start those reel-to-reels up this week. I got 3 cans of air spray to dust them off, and I got head cleaner. I'm going to clean them up because I got some tapes I'm going to digitize, some old recordings I'm going to digitize. So,
would that have always been the plan this weekend, or is it just whilst we can't leave the house, we got,
No, I've been working from home for a while, and I've been trying to, it's just one of those things that, when I used to work, I used to love getting the vacation time, and I'd always make plans, right? I'd make plans for a vacation. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. When the vacation was over, I didn't do half the stuff I planned. The vacation just slipped away out the door, and stuff didn't get done. It's the same kind of way right now. Yeah, I have all this time, but still, I do have other things I have to do. So,
Yeah, I'm kind of doing the same. I have like 3 writing assignments kind of due or going to be due soon, and man, my house has never been cleaner because I keep finding ways. I'm at home. It's like, no, everything needs to be perfect. I spent the day rearranging my lounge. I don't know why. It was better before I rearranged it, but I'm just like getting fixated on all because I'm not leaving the house. I'm like, oh, that's got to fix that. Got to fix that. Anything to put off doing actual productive work.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm gonna do that this week, I hope. Well, actually, it's today's Wednesday. See, the week's already over. I mean, the
on Wednesday night, I've got even less of it.
Yeah. What day is it there? It's still Wednesday night there, right?
Yeah, Wednesday night, 11.
Wednesday night. Because I interviewed, I did an Aussie special last year, but I had so many, I had to do 2 episodes. Chris was on one of them. I guess I had like 6 or 8, and I can fit 6 on at one time.
Yeah, I think I saw some of that because Chris was posting about that. Yeah.
Right, but the thing is, I don't like having 6 people on screen. It's too much. I mean, you want to get everybody in, but it's so like 2 or 4 is comfortable, and that works out pretty well. But you get to 6 and 8, and it's just too many for me. I like it better with you can talk to people longer.
Oh yeah, it's hard to anybody get a word in this. It's like just with the Corona thing, everybody's isolated. It's like, oh, we'll all get on group chats. We've got a tight knit group of friends, and we'll do a dinner party. But it's a nightmare because it's 6 videos of couples. So there's 12 people on screen, and they're all trying to get their word in, and it's just There
you go. So what's your next production? Do you have anything on the books?
In terms of production, it's getting a little tricky to figure out what production is going to look like. But for me, there's a couple of feature film scripts that are some which are written and we're sort of chasing some financing for, and some which I've been contracted to write. So I'm in the various stages of that, which is the first time I've ventured into something of that long form. So that's really fun. There's one feature film which is an adaptation of one of the short films, which is on YouTube, which is kind of coming along well. We're on the second draft of that, and then another where we're just trying to find some money to make the thing. We're just looking for about $5 million. So Richard, if you've got it, and you're looking
pocket change. Yeah, that's what executive producers do. They get the money.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. When 10.5 Final Cut Pro 10.5 comes out, and if you start using it, I want you to come back on and talk about the experience.
I'm happy to do it. I'll give it a go. Next project after it's come out, I'll just clear out some time and I'll see how I go.
And make sure Chris does the work. I know he gets paid, but make sure he does the work he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I'll try. Well, he's got kid number 2 due any day now, so he's got nothing else on his plate.
Yep, absolutely. So anything else, Michael? We're going to sign off.
No, I think that about covers it. Thank you very much for having me, and
It was great.
yeah,
Fantastic.
for being another person to try and get me on the Final Cut train. I see no reason to not jump on.
Well, the thing is that I don't really want to convince people, but I like you. So people that I like, give me a little nudge. They might like it. You can do both. You can do both if you wanted to for a while.
Maybe one last thing. We had that question earlier about whether or not it's professional software, and obviously that it is. And I think that these kinds of elitisms around things like software are
Sure.
pretty unhelpful. I mean, the sort of chip that I have on my shoulder is somebody who works out of After Effects to do a lot of his, my visual effects work. But that is, I think, considered. You can get great results out of it, but it's also got a little bit of an idea like, well, it's not Nuke. It's maybe a little bit more of a toy. But then, to conjure the name of Andrew Kramer one more time, I was at that NEB I was presenting at. He was there presenting of how he had headed a whole team doing the holographic special effects for Star Wars: The Force Awakens, and he did that in After Effects using a proprietary plugin, Element 3D, that he had used. And it's like, well, and yet, I think a lot of people might turn their noses up at After Effects, but it's like, well, it's good enough for Star Wars 7. I think maybe this elitism is just, it's not that surprising that it comes out of these kind of, nerdy fields, because I think we like being a little bit particular and elitist sometimes. So
yeah, we do. And sometimes people treat software like it's your partner or your wife or your husband. And that's ridiculous. It's not. You get emotionally attached to software. I don't do that. I mean, I like Final Cut, but I'm not emotionally attached to it to the point where I'm going to argue with people on the internet about it. I mean, having a discussion like we're having, that's fantastic.
It reminds me of growing up. I had a Nintendo, and other people had PlayStations, and it was schoolyard arguments over which one was better. Like there was any answer to that question.
Exactly.
But Nintendo was definitely better.
There you go. So I think we're good. I think that's everybody seems to like this.
Oh, cool.
Chris Lawson says, good interview. And Justine Paula Robillard, she's our friend from South Africa. She joins in all the time. I love the chat with Michael. So,
thanks, Chris and Justine.
Happy to be here. Absolutely. All right, we're going to sign off. Michael, like I said, when you start using Final Cut Pro 10.5, just after, you don't have to be fluent in it. Just when you start using it, I want to get you on and get your opinion, get your input on how the transition's going.
Yeah, I'll cut one project and we'll see how I'm going.
Yes, exactly. Thanks a lot, Michael.
Thank you very much, Richard. Good luck. See you next time.
Thank you.